Okay, good morning and thank you for joining the Cannon Resources Investor Webinar. Today I'm joined by Cannon CEO Steve Lynn, who will run through the investor presentation. To ask a question throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. Steve, I will now pass on to you to run through the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Katrina. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to run through our latest investor presentation. We updated this yesterday, 15th. So most of the financials will be up till yesterday. We'll go through the latest developments on the project and hopefully you'll be very enthusiastic and want to support us. So we'll get underway. So this is disclaimers that everyone should read at their leisure. Very important. Just a frontispiece showing us drilling last year when we IPO'd. So investment highlights for Cannon. So we're a nickel focused company, 100% nickel focused. We're Australian, we're West Australian focused in our tenements, and we have existing nickel resources. So we're class 1 high grade nickel sulfide is what we're after, and that's what our resources are. So we have two project areas with resource on them, one at Fisher East, our project called Fisher East, and the other one at another project nearby called Kodirabbie. They're both in the northern Goldfields area of Western Australia and about 400 or 500 kilometres north of Kalgoorlie. So very exciting work. We're currently drilling up there at the moment, and I'll go into the details of that in a second. So the potential upside is that we're growing our resources very quickly. We're very aggressive explorers and developers. We've upgraded our resource by about 49% since our IPO listing last year. And we're getting very good discoveries at the moment. So we've got some high grade hits at Sabre. And we're still drilling that area right now, as in today. And you know, all of those deposits at Fisher East remain open and expandable, and that's our intention there. So we have a very large potential deposit, but we've got infrastructure, an infrastructure advantage in that we're very close to BHP and now IGO, who have taken over Western areas. They're building a concentrator at Cosmos, which is 25 kilometres north of Leinster, and BHP have a nickel concentrator at Leinster, and they also have another one at Mount Keith, and that area is around about 200 kilometres by road, west of us at Fisher East, about 115 kilometres as the crow flies. So we're in a new nickel belt at Fisher East. We have complete control of the host rocks. We have about 40 to 60 kilometres of strike, and we have the tenements over all of that area. We have first mover advantage on that. We're a spin out from Rox Resources, and Rox discovered the nickel there. So the only people that have effectively explored it are Cannon and Rox. And we're 100% owned asset. We'd have no joint ventures with anyone, and at the moment our market capitalization is very modest. Yesterday it was $27 million, and you know, we have 116 kilotons of contained nickel at Fisher East, so that's an extremely good entry level into the nickel market. So company snapshot, we have 85 million shares on issue, around about $4.7 million in the bank. We're actively exploring, got an enterprise value of $22.6 million. In terms of our shareholders, we have 3 large shareholders take up most of it, which is Ponderosa, Rox Resources that came across in the IPO, and Hawke's Point, which is a fund based out of the UK. The rest of the shareholding is mainly retail and some smaller funds as well. So the management is myself, Trevor Benson, chairman. He comes from a finance background. Alex Passmore, Managing Director of Rocks Resources, a geologist with a finance background, and then Richard Bevan, who is a well-known company director. So very experienced board. So our strategy at the moment is to increase our resources at Fisher East. We want to understand the scale of what we're dealing with at Fisher East. Fisher East is our main project. We have a very large resource there, and it looks like we can expand it rapidly. So we're putting most of our activity into Fisher East. We want to see what the scale is, understand the high-grade zones within the ore bodies. We'll commence some preliminary metallurgical work as well this year, and continue our exploration along the belt, and also do some exploration at Kodira. Next year, what we want to do is start moving in towards a scoping study there at Fisher East. We need to do some infill drilling to convert our indicated resource or inferred resource into indicated, I should say, and we'll keep up the exploration down the belt. And then in 2024, start moving into a feasibility study and a final investment decision. You know, how are we going to mine this thing? Is it economic to mine? What parts of it are economic? How are we going to do it? Are we going to have a mill on site, concentrator plant on site? Are we going to toll treat? All those sort of decisions will be made at that stage. So this is just a peer comparison table. For the high grade nickel sulfide resources in Australia, there's not many. There's only about 6 or 7 that are not developed. So these are companies that aren't currently mining. So this is just about all of them. Nobody else has resource. You know, the exclusion here, of course, is it's got to be high grade. So high grade is defined as anything over about 1% nickel. And, you know, our grade at Fisher East is 1.8, the global grade 1.8. Individually, the deposits vary. And as you can see, we're thereabouts in terms of the grade, and we're sitting in the lowest position in terms of market capitalization, but we've got a very large inventory of nickel there. I'll just skip over this one. Just going into where we are. So we've got the Fisher East project, which is our main activity at the moment, and then Kodira. They're only about 80 kilometres apart in the northern Goldfields area. As you can see, they're east of Mount Keith, Leinster, Cosmos. At Fisher East, we've got 6.4 million tonnes at 1.8% nickel for 116 kilotonnes of contained nickel in 4 deposits. And I'll go into the details of that in a minute. And at Collurabbie, we've got a smaller resource of around about 9.3 kilotonnes of contained nickel. Now, the Collurabbie project is a different style of nickel mineralisation. It's intrusive style, so it's the style that's similar to the Nova deposit and Savannah in Western Australia. So those style of deposits have nickel, copper, PGE, and cobalt suite of elements, whereas Fisher East is a Campbell style komatiite hosted play. Doesn't really have copper and is very much nickel dominated. So our grades there, as you can see, 1.8%. There is PGE in there as well, and I'll go into that detail in a minute. So Fisher East is 4 deposits, all on the same contact, and all over a zone of about 8 kilometres on that contact. So Muscat, Cannonball and Camelwood all sit in a 2 kilometre section of that contact. And then we've got Sabre, which is 6 kilometres south of Muscat. So Sabre, the most southerly one, Sabre is 24.5 kilotonnes of contained nickel currently at 1.4%. It's the lowest grade of the 3, but it's the most underdone in terms of drilling, and you know, we fully expect to have higher tonnes and higher grade there as our drilling program progresses and the data comes in. Muscat is our favoured at this stage, our favoured deposit here, and the reason for that is because it has the highest nickel deportment of the 4 deposits. Now, what I mean by that is the sulfide species There's various sulfide minerals that are contained within the sulfide suite. Some of them are non-nickel bearing, for example, pyrite, pyrrhotite. The nickel bearing minerals would be pentlandite and violarite. So at Muscat, there is a high proportion of the nickel bearing sulfide species present. And the meaning of that is that, for example, when we get massive sulfide at Muscat, it's running up to 20%. When we get massive sulfide at Sabre, Cannonball, Camelwood, it's more typical grades that you would find, say, at Kambalda or over at Leinster, which is about 5 to 7% nickel. So, Muscat is, more than double the endowment. So very attractive. Obviously, if we find massive sulfide there, it's going to have bonanza grades, and, we're excited to keep exploring there. So I'll just go into the details of Muscat. So Muscat, we did a resource update earlier this year based on our drilling from last year. Last year, we did about 7,500 meters of diamond drilling in this area. So we did it at Sabre, Muscat, and Camelwood. Anyway, it resulted in a resource upgrade at Muscat. We had a 44% increase in resource there. So 2.4 million tonnes at 1.9% nickel for 45.5 kilotons of contained nickel. So that's the resource currently. The channel here is a subvertical channel. So we're looking at a long section here. So we're looking straight at it, looking to the west. And the channel itself is the margin, the left-hand margin on the pink, right across to the right-hand margin on that pink zone. So a semi-vertical channel plunging straight down around about 450 meters across with higher grade zones within it. So the light pink is the inferred resource, the darker pink is the indicated resource. And whether it's indicated or inferred is just a drilling density function. So to get it into indicated, we need to do it around, we need to have a drilling density of around about 40-50 meters. As you can see, the rest of the lighter pink color is around about 80 to 100 meter drilling density. So this is what I mentioned for calendar year 2023, where we need to do some infill drilling to bring that up into indicated category. So what we're doing here at the moment is, I'll just skip that one. What we're doing is we've designated some areas around the channel that we think has potential for expansion. Which of those areas coloured blue? Those green rectangles we've got in there are EM plates down the northern side of the channel. There's also other EM plates on the main part of the channel, the southern part, but I'm not showing those because they're basically over the top of the current mineralisation and basically just show where the mineralisation is, which we already know. But the ones on the northern side, there's only 3 or 4 holes in those plates, and what we plan to do is do some extra drilling there. So those red circles are our planned holes now. We're partway through that program. We've done about 3 of those holes currently. Waiting on assay data, and the idea here is we're going to drill into those blue areas, which are all outside of the resource, to get resource expansion and have a better understanding of high grade zones within it, and whether we can target those areas in future for infill drilling. And of course, this whole channel is completely open down plunge, so it's plunging straight down semi-vertically, and it remains open at depth. And our expectation is that it will continue, the mineralisation will continue, and we'll be targeting that depth extension as well moving forward. So just moving across to Sabre, the southern one, so 6 kilometre distance between Muscat and Sabre. This is a separate channel. It's around about 700 metres of strike extent. All of our resources crop out, so they all come to the surface. and then all plunge into the ground. So this one's plunging at around about a 56-degree angle, and it's much more lightly drilled than the others. And as you can see, drill spacing is around about 80 to 100 meters. And what the work we did here last year was we did extensive work across the top of it, where we did an air core program that returned very strong platinum group element anomaly, PGE anomaly, in the regolith. The regolith is the weathered part of the profile. So it's weathered down to around about 80 meters. And within that weathered zone, we got a very, very strong PGE response, as you can see, that goes right across the top of the channel. So the PGE response in that data defines the extent of the channel, so around about 700 meters. And not only that, there's 3 high-grade zones within that data, and our interpretation of that was that it described or defined 3 high-grade plunging chutes within the mineralized body itself. And that I've shown that there by those dashed arrows going down in the ground. So those dashed arrows are the plunge around about 56 degrees, and we think they're high-grade zones. So we were prepared to test that theory. So the blue areas are the areas where we thought the resource could expand into, and we tested that by drilling those holes, as shown there. All those holes have now been drilled. We're waiting on assay data to come back for about half of them. On the northern side, we had 4 holes all along that northern side that all hit massive sulfide, all in that blue area, all outside of the current resource, and substantial zones of massive sulfide. So the bottom hole there, MFED 117, got 3.7 meters of massive nickel sulfides, and 1 or 2 meters of lesser grade surrounding it. The hole at the top there, 118, MFED 118, got 2.8 meters of massive sulfide, followed by another 2.5 meters of semi-massive sulfide. So we're keenly waiting the assay data for those 2 holes. Our expectation is that massive sulfide will be nickel bearing, and it will, my assumption is it will have a grade similar to that we already know there from the 2 holes in between. So, we're keenly looking forward to that. I've got those assays fast-tracked at the lab, and I'm expecting the results within a week or so. When we get the results, we will release this data, and, we're looking forward to seeing what that shows us. Our interpretation, or my interpretation of this, is that we've got a high-grade zone running down the edge of the channel. At this stage, we think it's probably structurally related. Now, a structural cause of this is good news, because what that means is structural repetition and repetition of the mineralization, which allows for a thickening of the mineralization. So this is the sort of thing that we'd like to see, and we'll clearly be chasing this at depth as we go. So very exciting to see some high-grade zones in Sabre. Our predictive model looks like it's on the money, and when all the assay data comes back, my expectation is we will be able to do a resource update on Sabre, and we have to wait for all the assay data to come back, and that's probably about another month or so before that happens. So my expectation is we'll have a resource update underway sometime in perhaps late July, August of this year. And that'll give us a truer picture of what the nickel endowment is here. Now, bear in mind that Sabre's only drilled down to 300 meters vertical. So all those holes at the bottom there, around about 300 meters below surface. Our expectation is the channel will continue at depth, completely open at depth, and we're hoping that it will just keep going, and that will obviously be the focus of our exploration moving forward here. So that's Sabre. just going back to Musket, Musket's only drilled to 600 meters vertical depth. Cannonball's only drilled to around about 250 meters vertical depth, and Camelwood would be drilled to around about 500. You know, the deepest hole at Camelwood's probably about 600, but most of them are around about 500 vertical depth. So lots of areas to expand into there, and we're very excited to keep exploring there and expand the resources. So just a quick look at Kodirabbie. Kodirabbie, as I explained before, is an intrusive style, different to Fisher East. What the scenario is here is it was a series of sills which are horizontally intruded into the rocks, ultramafic sills that contain nickel. These have all now been regionally folded and are now semi-vertical and going straight into the ground. So all on that left-hand side of our tenement package there, where Olympia and Olympia North, Agora, Troy, all those Rhodes East, all those prospects, that's the prospective zone. And that's where the sills, which are that pink colour, strike along there. So we have about 15 kilometres of strike of those sills. They're highly prospective. There's many drill holes that have got good mineralisation in them, highly anomalous. You know, things like 4 meters at 1.3% nickel, hasn't really been followed up effectively, and we're keen to get in there and target some of these areas. So what we're doing here currently is we did a geophysical review of the existing data. This is a very data-rich area. A lot of explorers have been here in the past, including Western Mining and BHP. Lots of data sets, lots of geophysical data sets. So we reprocessed a lot of those, and we've just got that work back around about a month ago. And what we're doing now is putting some targets together, and then we'll get a drill rig out on site in the coming months. And the best targets we'll put some holes into and hopefully see where that leads us. So this is a fantastic project in its own right. We're keen to get on the ground there and do some good work. But Fisher East, because of its nickel endowment and the extent of mineralisation we have there, and the highly advanced nature of what we've got at Fisher East, is our main focus, and that's the only reason. It's just a better proposition at this stage for us. So that's it in summary. We're nickel focused. The upside is all our resources are completely open, especially at Fisher East, completely open and expandable. We're an aggressive explorer and developer. We've got a drill rig turning over there right now. We've completed, around about 6,500 meters already this year. We did 7,500 meters of diamond drilling last year. We're committed to putting most of our money into the ground, and that hasn't changed, and we're continuing with that strategy. The infrastructure advantage I already explained. We're very close to existing nickel concentrators. They've indicated, well, certainly BHP would be keen on getting our ore if we develop an ore body. So but we've got the optionality. That's the main point. We can either toll treat it if we want to, we can build our own mill, or we can do a combination of both. So that optionality is a handy thing to have. As I said before, we're on a new nickel belt. We have 100% of the prospective rocks. We've got first mover advantage. So, we've got the potential to find everything that's there if we're good explorers. And we have attractive valuation currently. So we represent the lowest entry point of the companies that have greater than 1% nickel sulfide resource, where we've got the lowest entry point. So around about $220. EV dollars per kiloton of, per ton of contained nickel. So very attractive valuation and well worth your consideration. So thank you very much, and I'll hand back to Katrina.
Thank you very much, Steve. We've had a couple of questions come through, so I'll kick off with the first one. What percentage of Fisher nickel is contained in the mineral violorite?
Well, it's a weathering product. So violorite is a weathering product of the pentlandite mineral, which is the main mineral that contains nickel. So it's a variable thing, and it happens towards the top of the ore body. So the top of the ore body is oxidized. It's oxidized down to about 80 meters, 70 or 80 meters. So all the sulfide minerals are converted to oxide minerals there. So below that, we have what we call the transition zone. So that would start at around about 80 meters, and it would be variable down to around about 150, 200 meters, that sort of thing, where a lot of the pentlandite's been converted to violorite. It's not such a bad thing. It's still a sulfide mineral. It actually contains more nickel than pentlandite, around about, theoretically around about 39% nickel. Pentlandite's around about 35%. The only issue is that you need to know where it is so you can set up your processing plant to handle it, because it floats slightly differently. That's the only reason you need to know about it.
Wonderful, thanks, Steve. And the other question we have is, what should shareholders look forward to over the coming weeks?
The coming weeks? Well, we've got some drill assays coming back for that Sabre area I talked about. We're continuing to drill, so that's not stopping. We're targeting that area where we've got the massive sulfide currently. So, you never know what we might find. We're targeting at depth currently, and we're planning to do some deep holes there as well. So that's coming up in the next month or so. When all the assays come back, which will take about another month, then we'll be looking at doing a resource upgrade or update at Sabre. And, I'm looking forward to seeing what that throws up as well, especially seeing we're getting higher grade zones that are outside the resource, which will fall into that all of a sudden. We should see a resource tonnage increase, and we also should see a grade increase.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Steve, again. And thank you everyone for joining the Cannon Resources Investor webinar. Should you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out via the contact details on the bottom of our ASX releases. And we look forward to updating the market in the coming weeks. Thanks very much.
Thank you.